Few things affect people more than the topic of money, yet we don't talk much about it. We trudge along and hope things will work out, but never really know for sure. I think it's time for some answers. Hi, I'm Tom Stone, and welcome to Talking About Dollars and Sensibility. Today's show is brought to you by Guild Mortgage Company, closing loans and opening doors since 1960. We're located at 175 North Main Street, right here in Heber City. And our phone number is 435 654 9979. That's 654 9979. Just come by and see us. We're located right next to the car wash, next in the Tate building. Today, I've invited Blake Baird. Welcome, Blake.
Welcome. Good to be here.
Blake is a real estate agent at Century 21, amongst other things. And over the years, I've gotten to know Blake and realize he's got a lot to share. A lot of knowledge in that head of yours, Blake.
Well, we'll try. I don't know about that, Tom, but it's good to be here, and I'm excited to talk about real estate and maybe other things are going on in the community.
So tell us about yourself. Tell us where you're from,
Okay.
your family, just a little bit about yourself.
I actually grew up in the Salt Lake area, the Cottonwood Heights area of Salt Lake. I moved with my family to the Heber Valley when I was 14, which was approximately 37 years ago.
Okay, so I think 50 is the magic number, so you're
fif-
getting close to the
51.
50 when you're somewhat...
Yeah, 51. I married a local gal, Annette Wade, and we have 5
Oh,
children.
that makes you in then.
I think that does.
Good for you.
After
All right.
30 years and marrying a native.
30 years
I
and marrying a
think-
native, I think you're in.
I think I'm in. And we have 5 children. I have a son and 4 daughters. And we just love the Heber Valley. When my family moved here, I have 3 other brothers that still live in the valley, and we've all just made it our home. So we love it.
Odds are someone knows one of those Bairds. They are very involved and do a lot of good things. No question about it. So what have you seen in those 37 years? In other words, I want to talk more about the economy and what's happened and just kind of see, from 14 years old, maybe you weren't so worried about the economy, but tell us what you've seen.
Well, obviously in the 37 years that I've lived in the valley, it's been a great change. When I first moved here, there wasn't a stoplight in the valley. We have now several stoplights. And obviously our population has grown. For me, I think the biggest change is just Heber Valley is being discovered more and more all the time. I think the Olympics really brought it to light, and so the thing I do like about the Heber Valley, although it's grown and it will continue to grow, which is a good thing, it still has a small town feel, which is very, very nice. And I hear that comment all the time when I work with people in real estate and people that want to move to the valley is, even though it's growing and it's busier than it was 37 years ago, it still has that small town feel, small town community, which I think is
Tell
great.
me, put your finger on that. So what is it that these people are feeling or seeing to give that description of small town feel?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I think just the people that live in this valley are friendly, and we love to be able to. They love to get along. They love to get involved, and support each other. And I think even though we are growing, like I said, Provo, Salt Lake still more hustle and bustle than we have up here in the valley.
So if you were to put a list on there with that growth, have you seen any negatives? Now, I don't want to, this is a positive show, by the way, but I'm just curious, are there any concerns that have happened over the last few years that you've seen?
The only negative I would say is sometimes it's hard to get onto Main Street from the Century 21 office at 5 o'clock. Honestly,
that is true.
That to me is the only negative that I would say.
I kind of like that answer. I didn't mean for that to be a digging question, by the way, because in all honesty, I'm looking out the window right now and seeing that mountain range and what this valley does. And I want to go into some intangibles on this show, and one of them is, as I've heard many of the people that have moved here, they say things like, I'm not really sure why I'm here, but I just thought it felt like the right thing to do for my family. I felt, it felt good when I got here. And some people have even used the word healing. So some people have said, I had a situation or a who knows in their life what was going on, and they came here to heal. So those are some cool things. Now, we're going to talk about economy and numbers, but truly I want to talk about some of these intangibles today that are probably as or more important.
Right. I think for me the intangibles would be, as you mentioned, the scenery that we have. We have a ton of recreation in this valley that is very accessible with fishing and golf and hunting. We have lakes on either side of this valley for families to go boating or fishing. I think it's just a beautiful valley surrounded by mountains. Mm-hmm. I oftentimes when I show homes, I love to have homes that have a deck that have a beautiful view, and I call them therapy decks. Mm-hmm. And I say that all the time to people. These to me are therapy decks where I can go out on a deck and sit and just look over the landscape and relax, maybe read a book, and it is healing. I guess that's a good point. But I call them therapy decks.
So there's a family that just moved in over by me in Midway, and they put on, this is a term that's new to me, but they put on their therapy deck all around their house, and it's facing Temp. And they're from Connecticut, just moved here, and they made the comment that their sister came to visit for a little while, and the sister spent many, many hours on that deck and said, oh my goodness, I had no idea that you would be able to have something like this. Yeah. And so that's a very good point.
And not only that, but just you're really 10, 15 minutes away from mountains. Mm-hmm. Go on a hike, have peace and quiet. Again, we talked about fishing. Go to a lake, just relaxing. I think there's a lot of that very accessible in this valley, which is nice. And it's not so busy in this valley that it takes 25 minutes to get somewhere. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're only 30 minutes from Provo, 45 minutes from Salt Lake. Sometimes in the Salt Lake area and in the Provo area, it takes them longer to get places than it does from Heber, just because of the travel and the traffic. Now so I think that's an intangible.
Absolutely. Now we're saying things that for most listeners who are living here in the Heber Valley say, yeah, we know this stuff already. But I'm just sitting here thinking if someone from out of state or someone visiting were listening to this show right now, they would go, oh my goodness, you're right. The mountains, the lakes, the trail systems. If you want to ride a horse, you have so many things right here. And I think we here locally, sometimes we don't see it because it's right in front of us the whole time. But it truly is that cool of a place and worthy of us treating it with respect and doing this right. Now, with that, I want to ask another question. So, many of these people who move in, including you, 37 years ago, myself, I'm on 28 years ago. So I married a native as well, so I'm getting close.
Couple more years.
Couple more years, I'll be in that somewhere accepted level, at least in some circles.
No, and you know what? We laugh about that, but it's a great community that is very welcoming, and so
no question. Yeah. I've seen what we call the old timers and the new timers get along and be very inviting. But us newcomers, whoever that might be described as, say, now that I'm in, let's close the door. You know, and that we've heard that a lot. We know that's not going to happen. So we've seen, even in the last 5 years, 6 years, a lot more apartments. In the last 10, 15 years, a lot of big developers have come in. We've seen a lot more high-end properties, so forth. What do you see as the appropriate mix? So in other words, more apartments, you know, socioeconomic status is what I'm talking about. So, you know, income levels and so forth. Where would you like to see, and this is a personal question, so this isn't, you can be professional about it too, but I'm curious, where do you see the need? A high-end situation, apartments for those who are doing more of the service sector?
Yeah, that is probably a major challenge for this community is being able to provide affordable housing and provide opportunities for people to live in this valley who are in the service industry, retail, or our teachers, our police officers. And so for me, as I've kind of watched this, I think it's been a pretty good, responsible progress. I think we are looking at possibly we need maybe a little bit more of affordable housing, I want to say, in that as a realtor looking at properties under $200,000, there's not a whole lot.
Right.
And so there may be another development that we need in that price range.
How does that happen when prices keep escalating? And of course, the construction industry right now, everybody who's in the construction industry is not looking for work. They're turning it away. Yeah. So that means prices go up.
Yeah, that's a challenge. And I honestly don't really have an answer for that. Sometimes a development will have to have a certain number of affordable housing that the city or the county requires. I don't know specifically on this this community, but sometimes that happens. So, my perspective, I think it's been pretty responsible. I think it needs to be more responsible moving forward. As a realtor, obviously, I rely on growth, but I do want it to be responsible growth because I don't want to lose the small town feel, which maybe some have already felt like we have lost that.
Sure.
But I don't feel that way. And so I guess that's the challenge for city council and Wasatch County councils to make sure it's done responsibly.
I had the opportunity last night to sit in for a few minutes on the Wasatch County Housing Authority meeting. So that's another very responsible piece that some of our elected officials started 15-ish years ago. And, they're at another point where they say, what should we do and how do we help? And they've done some senior assisted living. They've done a lot of things. And my hope is that they can take that and say, okay, let's go make some affordable houses, maybe build some. Again, that's their call, not mine. But it was fun for them to be for me to be in that meeting and see how interested and sincere they were about trying to help out this need we're addressing.
It's one of the things that I hear a lot is, we love the scenery of the valley, the open fields, and a lot of people don't want that to go away. At the same time, how do you tell a person who's farmed and worked hard for 30 years, now they have an opportunity to sell to help their family? How do you tell them no? So I don't know, maybe some farm preservation things that we could look at that helps both a seller and still keep the aesthetics of our valley. I don't know, but.
So I've asked some of those questions so people can get a feel for kind of how you look at things and what you do. Now, one thing that you like to be is involved, and you are on the school board.
I am.
In fact, you're the chairman. Is that the right word?
I am, yes.
School board. Tell us why you've chosen to serve on the school board, because you really got a target on your back sometimes. That's not always the most positive place because people say, hey, that's my taxes and so forth. And I don't want to go down that road. But tell me why you chose to do that and what you see and where you see, the school district going with this growth.
You said it in the very beginning. I decided to be on the school board to get involved. I've I indicated earlier, I have 5 children. All of them have graduated except 2, although my next daughter is a senior this year, so I'll have 1 left. She's a 7th grader. And so I wanted to be involved. I wanted to, and I didn't know where to be involved. And I thought the school board would be a good opportunity. I'm almost halfway through my 2nd term, and I've enjoyed it. Yeah, we do have a target on our back a lot of times, but I can honestly say that the people that I work with in the school board and the administration and the teachers, all of the staff at the schools generally care about our students and giving them the best opportunity to get an education as possible. And so I've enjoyed it, even though there's been some hard times, and there will continue to be hard times because we are a growing community. And as we continue to grow, I believe that there was a study that just came out that was, you never know, you can't predict the future. You don't have that crystal ball, but they were predicting that by the year 2050, there would be 80,000 people in this valley.
Really?
And I don't know if that'll happen or not, but obviously, as we see the growth continuing in our schools, then we have to make decisions for growth, for possibly where there's new schools, where we would put new schools, at what time do we build a new school. And those are things that we're talking about now and we'll be addressing, honestly, probably within the next 2 to 5 years. But I don't know specifically at this point.
Tell us the good that you see. Tell us the good with this, these decisions with these teachers.
What I really like and what we're excited about is this new digital conversion that we're doing throughout the school district, where we will have a computer device in every hand of every student within the next 3 years, from 2nd grade up. 1st grade, maybe we'll share some devices, but the high school next year, every high school student will have a computer, and we have a curriculum that is geared around that digital conversion. I feel, I don't want to speak for the whole board, I'll speak for myself, but I'm excited about the opportunities it gives teachers to gather it's a tool for teachers to gather information from all different resources as opposed to just one textbook. They can create a lesson plan to teach our students. And we are seeing that. We started this program a couple of years ago in the 5th grade. We're now 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and then next year we'll be doing it in the high school. So for me, that's a really exciting thing that's going on in the school district. As far as growth, and especially in the high school, we've increased our opportunities for college classes. My daughter, I indicated, is a senior this year. She'll graduate with over 30 college credits. I have a nephew who, when he graduates next year, most likely will have his associate's degree before he graduates. So those opportunities are available for our students in this valley. And when people talk to me about our education, I'm biased, obviously, but it is a great, I would match it with any district in the state as far as opportunity for our students.
You bet. This is KTMP 1340 AM, your hometown radio station. And today's show is brought to you by Guild Mortgage Company. Your loan on time, every time. Now, I'm going to pick right up where you just went because, so building that big, nice high school and new schools, my experience has been this. When people come into town and I sit down with them and they're looking to pre-qualify to buy a house or whatever it is, if they are a family with any kids at all, the first question out of their mouth is, how are the schools? And having that high school look like it does, and the beauty of it makes people, first of all, say, wow, you guys are really serious about your schools. I know the question marks with, boy, our taxes and those kind of question marks, but how it affects our economy to invest in these schools, of course, to invest in our children, that's what it is. Give me an economic point of view to folks coming into town, their view of that, investing into these buildings, but really it's the kids, and how you see that affecting the economy of the Heber Valley.
I want to think about that, Tom. I guess I want to say it's an easy answer, but investing in our kids is a huge importance. And as far as the economy down the road, well, if you've got good schools and you're producing educated students that come out of those schools, then if they start businesses in this community, that helps our community. If they decide to stay in our community, but depending on the job that they have, if they're educated and successful, that helps our economy. I think it helps our economy when we can attract good businesses to come to this valley because we are creating a good educated force that they can rely on. Hopefully that can happen.
As well as the educated, higher income folks want to have a place where their own kids are taught an education that they're proud of.
And receive a good education. And we're hoping, I'm hoping with this one-to-one technology that when we have students coming out of high school more prepared for college and career readiness, which again, hopefully will attract businesses to this valley because they know they have an educated workforce that can help and support. So that would be probably my answer to that.
Again, if there was a topic of this radio show of this hour, it's the intangibles. That's kind of what I wanted to discuss, that, we go right to the numbers, we can go right to the actual definitions, which is very important about real estate, about the economy. But all of these things that are the intangibles truly are the things that generate the economy. Why do people come here? Why are they buying? Why are they not buying? Why are things increasing or decreasing? And that's certainly not only a local but a national level as well. So these feelings or these hopes that people have, and then you have a bunch of people. There's some, obviously I'm very sensitive to the folks that are on fixed incomes and worried about their taxes going up. As you and I are talking very positively about this, they're saying, but boy, we got to control the expenses, and what a task at hand, right? We got to make sure both sides are taken care of, but these kids and the growth and the numbers of kids coming, so forth.
For a school district, we're mandated to educate our children and in a responsible way. And so as the growth continues, we're pretty committed. I'm pretty committed. I keep saying I am committed that we try to keep our classroom sizes manageable. And as we continue to grow, then those hard questions come up of when is it time to build a new school, and be responsible for the taxpayers and to try not to increase their taxes to where it's not manageable. And I believe if I've looked at, it's been a while since I've looked at it, but as far as the whole state of Utah, we're about in the middle as far as our property taxes and what we charge. As far as our assessed values of our homes, we're probably on the more higher end than the whole state. Not as high as Park City, obviously, and maybe not Washington County.
I'll back that up. I compare loan amounts. That's how we measure it. And my loan amounts, of all the people that I work with in Salt Lake, I have a higher average loan amount in there and the St. George. So it's just a little bit higher. Now, there's some high-end areas, don't get me wrong, but overall, during the whole Salt Lake Valley, my loan amounts are just larger because it's a little more expensive to live here, obviously. Okay, so ROI, return on investment. Now I'm going to change this subject now. This is the overall picture of the valley. Now I want to talk about more specific. I want to go to some numbers and talk about investing in the Heber Valley, commercially, residentially, and how are we to analyze when it's a good investment and a return on our investment?
The first thing that I would say on investing in real estate, whether it's commercial, residential, is you have to have staying power. That is the number one, I believe, the important thing when you invest in real estate is you have to have staying power. None of us have that crystal ball to know when the economy may go down or up, or as it goes in cycles. We talked about that a little earlier off the air. And the most important thing with real estate, in my mind, is you have to be able to hold and see it through. And then when the economy goes back up, then you sell. Trying to time that is a challenge of buying low, selling high. But and I think real estate is a great investment, but you just have to have the ability to hold, and in case we see a dip in the economy.
So let's define that for those. I mean, that makes perfect sense. But for someone who says that makes sense, we normally need detail. So how does a person get holding or staying power through the up and down? What is it they have to do to prepare for that? What are some things that you would recommend?
As far as being able to hold real estate?
So if somebody's saying, I want to invest, and you just gave that advice, so you would say, so with that advice, I would say, here's a couple points.
Well, you don't put yourself in a position that if it's a rental, let me do an example. You invest in a home, and it's a rental property, and you're relying on that rental income in order to make a payment on the investment. You have to have the ability that if it doesn't rent for 6 months, or if the rent all of a sudden goes from 1,000 to 800, that you have the ability to make up that difference until it turns back around, and you, instead of get 1,000, maybe you get 1,200. So maybe if you get 1,200 and your payment is 900, you better put some of that 300 away into a slush fund, so that if that right now the rental market's really good in the valley, and so
in fact it's so good nobody can even start to think that it'd ever be bad.
Right.
I have that conversation when I'm going to make this a rental. I'm going to change that. I'm going to change it to a rental. And man, my buddy got $1,600 and the payment's only $1,000. This is killer, and it rented in 2 days. He had a waiting list. But
that could turn. And the other thing, speaking of specific rental homes, you just have to make sure that it's managed appropriately, because there are unknowns in rental properties, and you have to make sure that you can. If you have to go back in and fix some things up after a renter leaves, then you have the ability to do that. So that's a rental situation. Let's say a lot. You buy a lot in the valley. It's kind of the same. If you get a loan to buy that lot, hoping that you can sell it and make some money within the next year or so, it's a speculation, and it's a little bit more of a higher risk. And again, you have to be in a position that if the economy happens to take a dip, that you can hold on to it until it comes back, and then you can sell it. When I first got into real estate about 10 years ago, it was crazy at that time, and I sold the same lot 3 different times in 1 year. The value just kept going up and up. But then we saw the market correct itself, is what I'm going to say, correct itself, and then all of a sudden it went down dramatically. So that person who bought at the high, now all of a sudden 50 cents on the dollar possibly they need to be able to hold that till it turns around, and it could be 4 or 5 years.
Let's define that cycle. So we know that happens. What causes that to happen? So again, I'm thinking I'd like to invest in a rental home or a lot, maybe commercial. We'll talk about in a second. But there's these cycles. How can you see them coming, and how do you know when it's time to sell? Mr. Crystal Ball.
If I knew that, I would be a very, very rich man.
I still want your opinion.
And I would be being a consultant.
A very rich one.
And we're kind of I guess what I would say on that is, as you see prices go up and go up quickly over a time frame, then you need to be a little bit leery of that. That cycle that we had before the drop was quite a long time. I think it went 5-6 years, maybe even 7 years. So it just gradually, and then the last couple of years, it really just exploded. At least in this valley, it did, and it did pretty much over the country, I believe. So I guess as you see that, as those prices go up dramatically, and it feels like really is the value of the property that high, then I think you need to be a little leery on that.
Okay, so that's great advice. Let me just repeat it. I think that's critical advice. So if the increased equity sales price of a property goes up quickly, certainly, a certain percentage in a year, if it goes up more than 5%, 10% in a year?
10%.
10% in a year.
Yeah.
Be careful that it might be something that goes up and goes down quickly.
Now, that all goes back to the economics of supply and demand.
Yep.
And really, that's the other thing to look at. If you see an overabundance of properties that are coming on the market, then that could tend to level out a value or even decrease a value.
So that's a critical point to get involved with a real estate agent like yourself, to say how many properties are on the listing for right now. How many are going? Do you see them coming? What's the feel? Because I've found people wait, kind of like look across the street, they look left and right. When they see someone else walk across the street, then they'll do it. And then when someone else does, someone else does. And if someone else does, someone else and someone else. And then there's too many, and then it's not a good thing anymore. So truly being that first, second, or third-ish person across the street, if you want to use that analogy, is the one that should be okay. But if you're the one that waits to see everyone else doing it and then you jump, that's when, if it's for a quick turnaround, that's when you may be worried about it.
The quick turnarounds are always things you have to be careful with. In the real estate market, they call it a flip. You have to really be careful. If you're looking to buy and flip quickly, that's when, again, you have to be very careful, because you can get caught, and then all of a sudden you're in trouble.
If someone were trying, and I know you and I this is a speculative conversation. This is not science yet, but knowing that we just came out of a down market with a flood of short sales and foreclosures, where banks took literal hits just to get out, and you were aware of that, and then you started seeing basically the inventory diminish, you could say, I'm probably on the tail end, and probably is the key word, buy that short sale, fix it up-ish, and turn around and sell it, and that, trying to time it on the end of the downslide to the increase up, this is if you're going to sell, not rent. Is that something that you could say you've seen work?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's been some very good opportunities out there with short sales and foreclosures, and
so you can see things. You can see.
Yeah,
okay.
Again, the key, and where realtors can really help out, is to see where the market is and for what the price is for square foot, and if you see a short sale opportunity or an opportunity to purchase a home that maybe needs some fixing up, you just have to see where those homes are selling at this time, and see what the cost would be to fix it up. I mean, this isn't rocket science at all. Those are just doing your due diligence and making sure. But yes, those are things you can predict, and if you buy right and know your costs going in of fixing up and sell, those opportunities are available. Not as many as there used to be.
Right.
By far.
By far.
Yeah.
Definitely more of a seller's market, we'd say.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah.
This is KTMP 1340 AM, your hometown radio station, and today's show is brought to you by Guild Mortgage Company, closing loans and opening doors since 1960. Blake Baird from Century 21 is here with us discussing how to get rich quick. Just kidding.
No.
Just kidding. Actually, how to try and be wise and prudent in doing this correctly and in a well, really the saying is timing is everything.
Yeah.
And that is applicable to everything pretty much. But the idea here is there does have to be a little bit of risk if you're wanting to invest in real estate. Staying power being the first thing out of your mouth, and that truly is the most important. And it may be that I can take this risk, and if it doesn't work out, I'll still be able to put food on the table with my family.
Right.
It's not going to affect other things. So I have an amount of money or an ability over here to maybe it's $1, maybe it's 100,000. That you could say, if I lose this, I'm okay, and I'm willing to have that staying power or make that risk.
And the one thing with real estate is I guess you could lose it if you don't if you get a loan and don't make a payment. But I think real estate is a pretty solid investment. Again, as long as you have that staying power.
Let's go to commercial. We've talked about residential. Let's talk about commercial. You own some commercial real estate.
I used to. I don't. I don't.
So
at
you've
this
had
time.
the experience.
Had the experience.
You've had the experience. Tell me, is it different than residential? Is it the same advice? How does a person look at commercial versus residential? Let me just add one comment. So I've heard many people say that the economy, it's first residential, and then commercial follows.
Right.
Explain that.
Oh, just as residential sales increase and as people are moving in, then that provides opportunity for commercial. So commercial
population increase.
Yeah. Commercial usually follows that population increase, and my experience with commercial properties are just I'm a conservative person, and so location is critical. Again, buying at the right price is critical. Staying power is critical. But for me, when I look at commercial properties or when I help people find commercial opportunities, I look for a strong tenant that and a strong long-term lease. And I may give up 1% or 2% in the cap rate, but if I have a known commodity of a renter, national tenant, they're the best, and a long-term lease, then that is a pretty safe commercial investment.
You said cap rate. Let's make sure people who are listening understand what cap rate means.
Cap rate is after the amount of money or the percent you make on an investment after expenses.
So if I have $100,000 investment and I have a 7 cap, I make 7% interest.
You make 7, and in a year you'll make $7,000 net.
Net.
That's what I'm looking. Yeah, there's both gross and net when you're buying real estate, and obviously I always look for the net because that's.
If you were looking at a commercial property to invest in, what kind of a cap rate would you say it's willing to do it? What are you looking for? You want a return of how much?
Well, on a national, again, it just depends on how conservative or how risky you want to be. On a national tenant that maybe he's traded on the stock exchange, has an A+ rating. If I can get a 20-year lease at a 6 to 7 cap, I'm going to be pretty happy, and that's about where you'll be, unless it's a ground lease, and those are usually only around 5. But if I am willing to take a little bit of a risk and go with a franchisee that maybe only has 5 or 6 stores, I can possibly get an 8 cap with that, maybe even a 9 cap, a 9% return, just depending on how long the lease is. The longer the lease, the lower the cap rate. The shorter term lease, the higher the cap rate.
And it's all risk-based, isn't it?
It is. And I think the key is location, because if that tenant happens to go away, if you've got a good location, you'll be able to get another tenant in there quickly.
Are there cycles to commercial? Are they the same as residential?
Oh, I've only been doing this 10 years, so I've only seen one cycle. My brother Kyle, who's been doing this for 20 years, probably would have a better feel. I would say yes. I think it is. I think it goes with the residential. And it doesn't drop as it follows it. So when residential drops, commercial will drop, but maybe it's a year or 2 later. When residential comes up, then commercial will come up, and it may be a year or 2 later. That's my experience and what I've heard from other agents.
So it follows. I mean, at the exact same time, but it follows the same cycle.
I think so. And it may just depend on the economy. Well, it does depend on the economy. It does. There were times when you could see cap rates at 8 and 9% on on a long-term lease, and now those are more conservative at 6 to 7 on a national tenant, like I said. So
it's been interesting as we're talking again now about more numbers, it still comes back to how people feel. It's still those intangibles. I feel like it's the time to now go and start my new business. I feel like it's the time for me to now go and buy my new house. This economy that we have such mathematical equations over is truly based on emotion. Am I ready to go buy? Am I going to go to Nordstrom and buy that new sweater finally after I've waited? I don't care about sweaters at Nordstrom, by the way.
Yeah.
But, just assuming that the retailers have more, then there's more jobs. It's just interesting how there's...
I think you're right. Yeah, there it is. I think the economy, people feel good about the economy right now. They feel like it's coming back. And I think they are more making those decisions. Is it time to move? Is it time to look for maybe a bigger home? First-time home I'm renting now. Is it a good time to buy? Which I would say, yeah, I think it is still a good time to really look at that. Interest rates are still really good. But you're right. Emotion does it just feel right to me now? Okay, I'm ready to take that leap. So, yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to go into what I believe is your specialty. This is my personal opinion, so you can't fight me on it. But I believe you have, I'm going to say even use the word mastered, or at least close to, the art of negotiating.
Wow.
Now, you're a humble guy. You don't have to accept anything.
Right.
But I believe that you are a very good negotiator. Now, as a real estate agent, and the value comes in, yes, you have to market the property, you put it on the MLS, and that's kind of like a standard, put it on everything, and wait for that person to come. But when that person comes, they walk through the house or the property of any sort, then they have a buyer and a seller. And sometimes you negotiate with the agent representing them, sometimes you represent both parties.
Right.
Take us through the art of negotiating. If I were a for sale by owner, and I'm selling, trying, and you were to, teach a negotiating class, take us through that.
For a for sale by owner scenario?
Just an example, just a hypothetical. If you were to have a class to teach for sale by owners how to negotiate.
Right. Well, for sale by owners are a lot unique for real estate agents because they don't have it listed. And so for me, if I'm representing a buyer and I'm approaching a for sale by owner, your question was if I'm representing or teaching a for sale by owner, they need to realize that if an agent brings a buyer, that they have to most likely pay a commission. They don't have to, but if I'm a for sale by owner, I'm going to be willing to probably pay someone who brings a buyer a commission. That can be negotiated,
sure, because
it is a for sale by owner, and I'd probably tell that owner, for sale by owner, to negotiate the best percentage they can.
Sure,
and so I think that they need to price their home based on that possibility. They have to pay a 2, 3, 4, 5% commission, depending on what that real estate agent is willing to do.
So walk us through how to negotiate all of these percentages and sales prices and who gets the fridge. I mean, go through some of these details.
Right. Okay.
I want the ceiling fan,
Yeah.
Wait a minute, that stays. No, it doesn't. Tell me about how to negotiate through all these things.
Well, when I'm representing a buyer and I put it in an offer, I'm going to include everything on an initial offer. The biggest things that aren't included most of the time is refrigerators, but those usually aren't a breaking point on an offer. It's not a killer if they either get it or they don't get it. But I'm going to include it if I'm representing a buyer. If I'm representing a seller, it's a negotiating point of, for example, a home is listed for $200,000, and I come in with an offer of $190,000. I'm representing the buyer, but it includes the fridge, the ceiling fans, the washer and dryer, so forth. And washer and dryers usually aren't included in them. But I'm going to start there, and then it's a negotiating point with the seller. They may counter back at $194, but I'm not going to include the fridge. I'll include everything else, but I'm not going to include the fridge. Then representing the buyer, I may come back and say, I'll accept that offer, but the fridge has to be included. So it's just a negotiating thing back and forth.
How do you do it? I know for you it's kind of a natural thing, but truly people get upset over some of the, like, by the way, home inspections can definitely cause a lot of heartache because the home inspectors find things, and then they're like, wait a minute, this list is, really long, and it might scare a buyer, and it might make a seller mad. And
you have to prepare your buyer on home inspections. If a home is 10 to 15 years old minimum, there's going to be some issues. The important thing is, how big is the issue? Is it a high dollar repair? Is it nickel and dime type of repair? When I say nickel and dime, $50 to $100. You have to decide what is the breaking point for that buyer on a home inspection. But you prepare them. There are going to be some issues. The thing that I think is important for both the seller and a buyer are home warranties. And for me, I think if I'm listing a home and representing someone who is listing a home, I always encourage them to include a home warranty, that they will pay for a home warranty for the seller, because that home warranty usually lasts for a year. It covers plumbing, it covers electrical, it covers appliances. There's usually a little deductible, but I can walk away from that sale and be okay. If something happens in that first year, they can go to the home warranty, and it makes the seller feel okay. It makes the buyer feel okay.
And you.
And sure, as
because you're representing a property, or to the buyer a property, this is going to be okay, and we're going to get the best thing for you.
Exactly. Back to negotiating, it really comes down to what a person's willing to sell a home for and what a person is willing to purchase it for.
How do you deal with a person whose home is listed and they think it's worth $300,000 and you know it's worth $250,000? How do you negotiate that kind of a thing? How do you have that conversation?
That's a hard one, because as a realtor, you want to be able to put a product on the market that you feel confident that you can sell, and sometimes it just takes time that you have someone that you want to list the property for, and it may be higher than what you're willing to not. Number one, you may not want to take the listing because it's too high, or number two,
and why not? Why wouldn't you want to take it?
Just if it's unrealistic and you feel like.
Yeah, but isn't there a tactic, by no one in the valley, I would assume, but isn't there a tactic that says, I'll give them a real high listing value to get my 6 months contract, and then tell them later that it'll have to go down? That's not what happens in the valley here with the great agents.
And I think you just communicate that up front, that this is where I really think, this is what I try to do. This is where I really feel that this home would sell, but I'm okay to list it at a higher price if you'd like, and then let's watch it.
But you tell them
it's communication. And then just, then you watch it over time. And I've seen it both ways. I've seen where I was wrong and a home sold for higher than I thought it would. And that was great. And I've seen times where we've had to lower the price to get it to the point where it, and part of that is all doing your due diligence with seeing what's on the market, what is selling on the market, and giving your buyer and seller good information. Here's what the market will bear. Here's where it will appraise at. Giving them as much of that information up front so that they understand.
How often can that change? So your due diligence, your analysis of the market, here's what it's worth. How good and how long is that information good with these cycles that we talked about earlier?
I think right now probably 3 to 6 months. I mean, things could change within 3 months. We've seen that especially with homes in some of these developments that were purchased 3 months ago, and now it's a higher price to purchase that same home. So I'm going to say 3 months in an economy that's growing and moving pretty fast, and then probably 6 months on the farscape, on the far end, I guess is what I want to say.
So if I'm listing my home, it's probably an analysis every 90 days, an update of, hey, this is what's going on, this is what's sold, and
every 30 days.
Every 30 days.
I think you ought to meet with your client especially listing a home, every 30 days. But you're also keeping them updated on showings, what people are saying about the showing. If you haven't got offers, if a home is shown a lot, hasn't had an offer, it's an indication, okay, we're probably a little too high.
They like the home, but your price point
show's good, but it's just the price point. So that's, if it's not showing at all, then that may be an indication, okay, we're too high. Now, if I'm representing a seller that doesn't have to sell, I want to test the market, here's what I'm willing to take, that's a whole different story, and that's okay. And it may not show a lot right now, but they're okay with that because they don't have to and don't necessarily need to and don't care to, but if they get the right price, they'll sell.
Are there times of the year where, still listing a house or selling a home, that you would say you'll have a better chance, better opportunity for a higher price in a certain time of the year?
Oh, I think everyone would probably agree that from March through September is a great time to sell. People who are looking to relocate, want to get get into a new place before school starts in August. The spring always seems to bring out more activity, obviously.
Especially when people come to this valley, like we talked about the first. Oh, look how pretty this is. Maybe want to move.
Yeah. So that's the bit I think it's easy to say from March to September is a great selling time. But when the market's good, it's good year round. So
it just rolls on through.
Yeah.
Take us through, and this is a little bit monotonous, but take us through a contract. So, in other words, where do you get the contract? What are the important key components to that real estate purchase contract so people understand what to look for?
Well, and especially in negotiating, you've probably heard the term cash is king. Cash quick close usually generates a better opportunity to buy at a lower price. Usually, not always. But usually in a contract situation, you want to try to close as soon as possible. That's an advantage to the buyer or the seller. He wants to have this property sold and close as quickly as possible. So you have three or four different dates that are important. Due diligence, that gives you time for a buyer to do any tests, evaluations, any inspections they want to do on the property that they're buying. That's a key. Seller's disclosures is important. That's the seller needs to disclose anything that he understands about the property, any problems that have had.
Are there laws that says they have to disclose?
There are, yeah. There's a form, a real estate form, that they have to fill out and answer to the best of their ability. And that's really the first step of the contract. Seller's disclosures is first. Then due diligence usually is another week or 10 days after that. And then the next important time frame on a contract is the financing and appraisal. And obviously, if I'm getting a loan, I have to make sure the home appraises, and I have to make sure I can qualify.
And that one is the one
that's where you come in
right there.
You have the experience in that, obviously, and then usually you can close after that finance and appraisal within 3 to 5 days. But the quicker, and as you know, in your business, the quicker the better. If I can turn this around in 30 days, that's an advantage and what a buyer likes to see. Depending on the type of loan, it could take longer, and you just have to gauge that. When we were doing, and you'll know this, when we were doing rural housing loans, 3-4 months ago, it was literally, in January, it was literally a 30 to 45 day business day turnaround for a rural housing loan. Now that's down, from what I understand, 7 to 10 days.
And rural housing is a popular loan. So
did that answer your question on a contract?
Yes, but I want to ask one more about it.
Okay.
If I were not knowing anything about a contract, or if I were a new client and you were sitting down with me and going over this contract, dates, critical, anything else?
Well, sure. They need to understand. Well, time is of the essence. They have to make sure they hit those dates, and don't let dates for due diligence.
What happens if they miss the dates?
Then they possibly could lose their earnest money if they don't. They decide not to buy a home after they've gone through their due diligence and after they've done their financing appraisal, then they could lose their earnest money deposit. So that's very important. It's a 6-page REPC, and so all of it's important, and it's important for.
Where can they get a copy of it?
Well, at any real estate office, and they probably could go online and just look up real estate purchase contract and probably be able to print up a generic one.
And just for the record, I do that often because you can go to the state of Utah website, utah.gov, under real estate.
Oh, and be able to
right there too.
The Wasatch Front, which we're a part of, they have a website, and I'm sure that you could probably print one from there also.
Give me a minute on the Wasatch Board of Realtors and why that was formed and what benefits that you see from that.
Well, the biggest benefit, I think, for the Wasatch Board of Realtors is people have the access to realtors in this valley that really know the valley, really know the market, can be a great asset to helping them find a home or sell a home at the appropriate price range because they live here. And
these cycles we're talking about, and every 30 days it changes. Being a member of the Wasatch County Board of Realtors gives a little more insight?
Sure. Definitely, as opposed to an agent outside of the valley. Not that they're all good agents.
Sure,
but I think that's the key for the Wasatch Board.
But if you were going to go help somebody buy a home in Tooele, you would be able to represent them well.
Sure.
But you may not know all the ins and outs.
I would be able to do as much investigation as I can, and I do. I help people buy all over the state. But there's just a little more insight with a local a local realtor. And we have a great relationship in the Valley with our local realtors. We know each other.
Explain that, because in a sense you're competition, in a sense you're not.
Right.
Tell me how that works.
There's kind of a camaraderie is what I want to say. In fact, I'm on the show today. We have our caravans every Tuesday from 10 to usually noon. Doesn't happen every week, where we, as a group of realtors, we go out and we look at the homes that realtors have listed. We get to associate with each other on a more informal basis, get to know each other, develop good relationships, trust each other in the negotiation processes and closings. And so I think that that's all a very beneficial thing of being on a board, and especially in a community like Wasatch where we know each other and can support each other and help each other. But we help all realtors, and that's just the professionalism of a real estate agent, whether they're from the Valley or not.
I heard a few more intangible words in there, by the way. Trust, get to know each other, have a relationship. These are things that you say, give me the math, but there's these intangibles that are so critical to making wise and prudent decisions, are as or more important, I believe. So, Blake, how many easy deals do you do?
There are no easy deals anymore. No, it is really. There used to be a lot of. There's maybe one or two a year that are, I would say, easy deals, but not near as easy as they used to be.
Take us through a normal deal. So you get a client. Let's do one that you're representing as a buyer.
Okay.
And they pick a house, and how soon and how they qualify and close. Tell us through that quick, just quickly that process.
An easy sell would be where you could have a client come in, identify a home within 2 weeks, take them out, show them homes within 2 weeks, identify a home that they like, get them pre-qualified with a lender, make an offer within 3 days of maybe negotiating back and forth. You have that home under contract, and you close that home 30 days later from the time of the offer. That would be, and with no hiccups. You still do your inspections. You do your due diligence. You review their seller's disclosures, make sure there's not any issues there, and that the loan is qualified, goes through smoothly. That would be an easy to me. And so I'm saying from beginning to end, a 50-day turnaround would be an easy one. 45-day turnaround would be an easy one from the time you started looking.
That's worthy of someone listening to, because an easy transaction for a realtor, in addition to the marketing side, is that you worked 45 days.
Yeah. And I think that's
to get an easy one done.
And that's normal and doable. The very easiest ones are a cash offer, close in 2 weeks. I mean, that's the very easiest, where we find a property, I've got the cash, put an offer in, do our due diligence, and close on it. Those are the easiest.
How about a hard one? Or a tough one?
Hard ones are the short sales, more than even foreclosures, because a foreclosure is bank owned, and the bank's
already
ready
gone through the process.
The bank, yeah. So the hardest ones are short sales, but they can be the best opportunity depending on if you can be patient
for the client.
And depending on how long it takes. I've seen short sales go as quick as 45 days and as long as over years. Honestly, years. And so those are the tough ones. I'm not counting a short sale. Then tough ones are just when you are going through the process and you might identify something in an inspection that has to be worked out between the buyer and the seller.
And that's something you
sometimes
can't foresee.
You can't foresee that, and sometimes they don't always get worked out. And when I'm representing a buyer, there's a time that I'll tell them sometimes you have to lose to win. And that
what does that mean?
And that means
give us details on that.
When the price is just to a point that isn't what I would feel is right for the market and appropriate, even though they love it and they get emotional and this is the house I want, then you give them the advice, but sometimes you have to walk away from this one, but then there will be a better opportunity where you win down the road. And so
how do you negotiate through that? Someone's emotionally attached, they want to push through it, and you have to help. I don't know if we want to use the word convince, but you kind of do say, you know what, it's okay to let this one go and it's time to move on.
You just give them the advice, but ultimately it's their decision, and you support their decision. So you just give them what you feel is your advice, and I've seen it go both ways, where you know what, this is what we want, this is the location, we understand it maybe is a little bit higher, but for us that's okay, and it is okay. And sometimes it's like, okay, we better just pass on this one, it's not coming to the price point that I want, and we'll look for something else. And they will. They'll find something else.
So to be a real estate agent that is truly the one that you would want to hire, if you were to describe it, as someone who knows how to listen, ask questions, and put someone else's thoughts and opinions in front of yours. But you're not afraid to share thoughts, specifically if you know something about the property that could be negative.
Oh, yeah, and I think the biggest thing is just for a realtor, it's you can't worry about the next closing. You don't push your clients so that you can have a commission. You let them be able to make the decision on their own, giving them the best advice possible. And then if it doesn't work out, it doesn't ruin your day, it doesn't ruin your life. Even though we depend on those commissions, you've got to be able to just let your clients make those decisions.
So to be a real estate agent that does what you just said and is somebody who that I would want to trust, like the members of the board here, I need to have someone with staying power.
Yeah.
So it isn't just in real estate purchases, it's in your employment that, hey, I've got to be able to survive from one commission to the next.
That's the advice I would give anybody coming into real estate that wanted to be a real estate agent is you've got to have staying power. Sure.
Because you'll have a great period of time and then you'll go hungry for a while.
And you'll represent your clients better if that's the case, if you have that staying power.
Wow. So I have one last question. I said wow because it's 10:57. We're almost done here. Time flies when you're having fun,
pretty
Blake.
painless.
So here's what if I were to try and emphasize one thing about this show, and we've had people on here talking about credit repair, we've had them talking about wills and trusts, we've talked about real estate, we've talked about stocks and bonds and everything in between. For some reason, we, the community, people at large, have a hard time going and sitting down with you or me or any of these other folks and just ask questions. And just ask. We're assuming that we'll get tied in somehow, or that we're gonna, some feeling there. Tell us what you would say to help somebody just come talk to you. They might be ready to list yet, may not be ready to buy yet. Would you be willing to talk?
Oh, sure. And I'm sure every realtor in this valley, especially, but any realtor would be happy to do that, because you don't know. We call it a pipeline that we have clients that are in various stages of that pipeline, and one of that stage may be just to talk, and you may not end up having that client, or that client may end up doing a for sale by owner. But we're all willing and happy to just sit down and let them ask questions, show them where the market is, and hopefully they'll want to list with us, or they'll want us to represent them to buy. But we're always happy to.
If I were to try and if an overall reason for this show is that I truly believe, and I've got my 20 years in the Valley doing financial stuff, I've gotten to know a lot of people in finance just because of what I do, from stocks and bonds to real estate and so forth and so on. And the folks that I have chosen to associate myself with, which are the people here in the Valley for the most part, and a few others, but are those that I say, wow, they know their stuff, they truly have the client's best interest, and they're easy to talk to. And so my emphasis is to say, call Blake, call myself, call these folks, and just chat. Ask all your questions. Run it past them. If you're more of an Internet Explorer guy, where you want to do all your information on the Internet, come with your information and run it past and get the point of view from somebody who's the professional here locally, especially if it changes every 30 days in a local or regional economy, because the Internet may not be the best source. So if I were to make a point, and then these intangibles we talked about, trust, timing, understanding these things, asking questions, I think that's absolutely critical. Blake, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Boy,
it's been a pleasure.
It's one of those that I'm like, that was a lot of fun. So thank you. I have to do a couple things. I have to do my disclaimer. And I always did this fast, thinking it was kind of funny. And then I would go back to work, and Margot, who works with me, would say, that sounds dumb. Just read it slowly. So I'm kind of in a mix here. Guild Mortgage Company, NMLS 3274, Equal Housing Lender, Tom Stone, NMLS 257849. The information contained in this training has been prepared and distributed for educational purposes only and do not represent the opinions of Guild Mortgage Company. I hope that's okay with Margot. I don't want to have her tell me again that it was not good enough. She's very critical of me at times. I'm just kidding, Margot. Just joking. So, Blake Baird, how do they contact you?
My cell phone or the office. My cell phone is 801-735-4945. Our office, Century 21 office number is 435-654-3024.
Okay. I would highly recommend Blake for any of these real estate needs. I've personally had that opportunity many times with him, and everything that we've said on the radio show is full-blown truth. Thank you for listening today, and next week we will have another one about credit and variations of that, because we want people who have been on the outside from maybe that crunch in the economy knowing how to get back in and feeling comfortable in doing so. So that'll be next week. Thanks again, Blake.
Thank you.